Well, although this is a LLATL workshop, LLATL is language, learning language arts through literature. I have shared with you some of the extensions that we can add to it, but I can't not include in a learning language arts through literature workshop my greatest passion of all when it comes to language, and that is reading aloud. You'll notice on the Oikos website we've got a selection of literature with read aloud books that are classics that have become our favorites, and we've put them there for you to have as well if you want them. But read aloud, like I was sharing in the previous clip about poetry being of such huge value, I don't think I can emphasize the value of reading aloud enough to anybody who's willing to listen. It is just so great. The lessons learned, the memories built, the experience, the exposure. I suppose it's become very close and meaningful and important to us because of the many hours that we spent at hospital beds with our daughter so critically ill, and how reading was the most incredible gift to her. It could transport her into another world while we're reading about all these different characters and what's going on. Reading the word aloud as well. It's just, let me put it to you like this. I was having a conversation with our son a couple of weeks ago and talking about the fact that we had read from Genesis to Revelations through, the word through, over and over and over, every word from Genesis to Revelations a number of times before they were adults. And I didn't realize at the time that by just doing that as a discipline, intentionally reading the word to them, was actually going to result in what it has. And that is adults that were our children, adult children now, that are word enriched to such a degree that when they speak in the word. When they are making decisions, the word is so entrenched in them from reading aloud, not from telling them you must go read your Bible. Okay? And not only the word, but this beautiful literature whereby you're putting into real life people's experiences and their perseverance that they had to have in their character to get through a trial that they were going through, and how by having the word and having God in your life and being able to call on Him, how, to bring those two together and make what I've read in the word is read aloud relevant to how it can be applied into daily life. That is one aspect. I mean, you can imagine how much I could speak about that. But the literature, just the novels, just sitting reading to your children when you're driving in the car every day, in the evening, the fire, in bed, whenever it happens to be, the hours that we spent, I know it's excessive, the hours we spent because of the fact that we had so much illness. And even myself, when I was bedridden with cancer, that what could I do? I couldn't get up and run around organizing the household. What I could do, though, is read to my children. And the result of that has astounded me. So I'm just going to encourage you and encourage you and encourage you. If you ask children that are adults now that have been home educated, their fondest memories of home education, one of the first things that comes out of their mouth is the read aloud times that mom read aloud to us or dad read aloud to us. It is just standard. If a mom or dad has exercised that in their family, our parents did that for us when we were growing up. It was read aloud evenings. And there's just something extremely precious and valuable about it. So now, I've had this experience, and I'm encouraging you to please make time to read aloud to your children. And we were on holiday somewhere down the coast somewhere, and I walked into a craft shop, and the radio was on. And there was a interview happening with some professors of communication or literature, I can't recall exactly. And the interviewer was asking them questions about, communication and literature and language and all that. And the one professor that was answering said, well, the best way to teach language and literature and a love and a passion for literature and language is to read aloud. Now, when you're reading aloud to somebody or to children or students, which doesn't happen in the classroom anymore, he was saying there's not time for it. You don't have teachers sitting reading aloud to the children. And that's a big loss in the school systems. They were speaking about school, not about home education. And then he went on to explain why it was such a loss and the value and the academic reasons. I mean, I was in the store. I didn't know which program it was. So I can't even reference back and tell you where to go and find out this information. But I was astounded at what I was hearing him tell me, what I was listening to about the value of reading and all the lessons and the learning that's taking place when somebody's reading aloud. And so I did a little bit deeper research and went and had a look. And I was just astounded at how much good is happening when we are reading aloud. And it's not just about the heart and about these precious memories and these wonderful moments. I believe it had a lot to do with helping our daughter with many, many learning difficulties get to where she was. I just wonder if I took the reading aloud out all those hours, if she would have had the same abilities that she has today. After listening to that professor on that radio program, it made me realize that we had given a tremendous amount of value into her abilities by simply reading aloud lovely stories and well-chosen novels that have good content, that where we can teach lessons all the way through. The other thing that happened with reading aloud is we experience things from our children that I don't believe I would have known if I hadn't read aloud. If you're sitting watching a movie, they might pass a comment here and there. But reading aloud got them involved in the story, and they would say things to me, oh, I would never do that, or sure, he was brave to do that. I wonder how he got so much courage. And again, we could take that to the Word and say how we can, where we get our courage from. We get it from the Lord, and this is how. And so we discovered things about where our children were at when we were doing reading aloud a lot more effectively than watching a movie together or even just chatting sometimes. The read aloud took us to a place that we wouldn't have been able to create without that read aloud. So that was one of the very great values that we found. And before I go off the reading aloud, as I say, I could just talk and talk and talk to you about this reading aloud. But before I go away from that, I just want to paint the picture for you of read aloud, because some moms will say to me, but their children fidget and they don't listen and they talk and they get fidgety and agitate one another, and that doesn't work for them read aloud. They don't have a nice read aloud voice, or there's lots of reasons why they're saying read aloud doesn't work for them. Well, this is what I would like to say to you, is that first of all, we never expected our children to sit in a straight row and sit quietly with their hands in their laps while I read aloud to them. No. Once again, I set the stage. The one liked to color in, the other one liked to play modeling things, Play-Doh, whatever. Another one, our son liked to build models, so I'd get the model building out, and it had to be quiet activities. He couldn't play with his Lego when we were doing read aloud, it could make too much noise. Okay, so it was quiet activities that I chose. It's not noisy to color in, right? Or to do handwork or crocheting or whichever, cross stitch. Quiet activities was what we used to do when I was reading aloud. So we would set the stage, take our box that had the quiet activities, all set as read aloud time. The other thing that happened with read aloud time is if they started talking to each other, pass me the crayon or something, I just started reading softer so that they couldn't hear the story so well. So instead of saying, be quiet, I'm trying to read, listen to me, instead of that, I just lowered my voice lower and lower, and so then they got softer and softer, so they'd say, pass me the crayon. and then it wouldn't be as much of a disturbance. But preferably, it was understood just by the stage that was being set that when you make a noise, you're missing out. Right? And so basically it just became a very, very quiet time. Right? So we would sit together, and it would be this precious, quiet, special memories of sitting and having the story read, and I would stop and talk, and we would chat about it. It wasn't just read paragraph after paragraph. Read a bit, talk about it, all discuss it, chat about it, read a little bit more. Sometimes read for a very long time, sometimes a much shorter time, depending on your circumstances. But the last thing, well, there's never a last thing with read aloud, but I just had to smile the other day when a mom shared with me that she can't stop reading aloud to her children, because when she tries, they say, oh, Mommy, please don't stop, carry on. Mommy, please don't stop. You see, if you sit down and read aloud to your children and find out if they enjoy it, and you'll be able to assess very quickly that this is something that they love. And if they're not loving it, it's because they're having to sit still with their ears on and their hands still. Try and set the stage to make it a really pleasant experience. Because I have now started hearing more and more testimonies, fortunately, of moms who are making time to do this, and dads dads that are reading aloud to their children. I mean, how precious is that? It's absolutely fantastic when a dad sits and reads aloud to his children or climbs into bed with them and reads them a bed night story. That is very, very precious. It has a lot more to do than reading aloud. The relationship being built, the love, it's just hearing their hearts. It's just fantastic. So I know it's not about LLATL as such, but this is a language workshop, and I believe this has a massive, massive part to play in it. So I really, really hope that you are feeling drawn or excited or passionate about rushing off and getting some good literature and building reading aloud into your... Oh, wait, I got something else to tell you. One mom who told me she can't read aloud to her children because they don't like her voice when she reads aloud, and she gets emotional when she's reading the story, and she starts crying when I said to her, find a fun story and read a little bit at a time. Just a little bit, just read a paragraph. So she said, all right, she'll try. Do you know that 3 weeks later, she phoned me. She said to me that she read just the paragraph and they asked her to carry on. She said she couldn't believe it because normally they tell her to stop. So she read just the next paragraph and she was tempted to carry on because they asked her, and she said, no, we'll carry on tomorrow night. And I thought that was wise because she left them hungry. She left them wanting more. And slowly but surely, she gained confidence. And her reading voice improved as well. She just wasn't reading like without any emotion or feeling. And the reason why she was so deadpan with reading is because she was keeping her emotion in check all the time because it kept on unexpectedly surprising her. But let me tell you about that. If you do have emotion when you're reading aloud, that's also a good thing because your children can see you moved by the story. It means something to you, and then you share about that. I mean, I used to sit there and sometimes not even be able to carry on reading because I just wanted to cry because the story had such an impact. And again, it's just another learning opportunity. Precious, precious times. So please read aloud to your children. It's the most important thing I can say on this workshop.